She is the Scarlet Woman, the great whore of Revelation, the mother of Abominations, but she is no monster under the laws of Thelema. She is the sacred mother of desire, the whore who refuseth none, the cup into which the ego is poured and dissolved. She is Babalon. To pronounce her name is to summon a contradictory essence, wholeness, entwined with licentiousness, surrender as a form of strength, destruction as a source of rapture. She is no devout virgin nor distant mother figure. She is scarlet blood, centuries unopened wine, and rose with exactly 156 thorns. She is the keeper of the cup as much as the opener of the abyss. To pass into the other side and to execute the great work, each adept must entirely and without qualification surrender themselves to her. But Babalon is more than simply a mystic symbol. She is an active living force and energy that resonates with concepts regarding sexuality, freedom, and non-conformity. She is the sum, the goddess of the sacred erotic. She is the sum, the keeper of queer and feminist magic, the embodiment of freedom from bondage and the assumption of physical freedom. At the very minimum, she presents each grand challenge. Are you willing to surrender? Are you capable of loving without shame? Are you ready to drown your very being into her cup? This is the mystery of Babalon. Babalon as a character comes forth from among the most seminal symbolic pieces in Western literary tradition, the Book of Revelation. There she is revealed as a part of a vision that combines radiance and terror-inspiring authority, described as a woman clothed in crimson and purple of a precious stone and holding a golden cup. And there came one of the summoned angels, saying unto me, Come hither, I will shew unto thee the judgment of the great war that sits upon many waters, within the kings of earth have committed fornication. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, embroidered with gold, and precious stones and pearls, having a cup of gold full of abominations. On her forehead was written a name, a mystery, Babalon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. In the Christian imagination, she is decadence, imperial majesty, the execrable that falls attaches to sin. Her image is framed to engender horror, being a symbol of excess and moral dissolution. Though as later we see the imagery doesn't just go away, the woman attired in crimson, the golden chalice, the air of absolute authority. She was powerful, enemy to domination, which Lady Shield reclaim what made her witch. Centuries later, the same imagery echoes through a very different pair of mystics, still from ones with Christian background but held in orderly heretical from that time. In the late 16th century, John Dee and his squire Edward Kelly recorded a sequence of angelic communications in the language we now call Enochian. Among the words and visions in these journals appear poems transliterated as Babalon, rendered in translations as harlot, and Babylon, rendered as wicked, and a piece of visionary speech, commonly called the daughter of fortitude, a voice that speaks of understanding, appetite, and to some, paradox. I am the daughter of fortitude, and ravished every hour from my youth, for behold, I am understanding and science dwelt in me. These Enochian passages show that the phonetic root later used by modern occultists was already present in these records, and that the voice associated with it carried a strange mixture of sanctity and transgression. Finally, in the early 20th century, Aleister Crowley again explored this archetype. In his occult practice and the visions he had in the Sahara Desert, the latter being recorded in the vision and the voice, before Babalon was reinvigorated as Babylon. Aleister Crowley adopted the spelling of Babylon as the name of divine feminine current within his system. The woman who called the cup, the one who gathers the blood of saints, and one who stands as the initiatrix at the threshold of the abyss. Crowley's work is not just coincidental warring. He framed the older motives into coherent theogony, which the Scarlet Woman is once mother, whore, and grail. Presence that sanctifies desire and demands a total offering. In place of being the Trajan figure of corruption, she appeared as a goddess representing ecstatic love and powerful transformation, the Scarlet Woman being honored instead of reviled. In the interpretation of the 12th Aether by Crowley, she declares, all the afflictions are as shadows, they come and go, but there is that which is left. Furthermore, within the 14th Aether, as it stated, for I embody the unadorned radiance of the sensuous night sky. I represent the fire that ignites within each human heart and resides in the center of every star. These words resound with a very different tone from Revelation. No longer a warning ascent, but Babalon becomes a declaration of imminence. She is not apart from this world. She is within it, radiant and ashamed, the very essence of desire and surrender. Her cup is transformed. It no longer holds abominations, but the blood of the saints, the life of every adept who poured himself out to the cross the best. To give oneself to Babalon is not destruction in the sense of damnation, but transformation. The ego dissolved so that the soul may pass into greater mystery. In Thelema, Babalon moves beyond the role of myth. She is a living symbol of the great word, the initiatrix of dissolving illusionment, and the one who gives sacrament of love, sexual passion, and surrender. She moves the spiritual quest beyond renunciation, asceticism, and into the acceptance of passion and sacrament. While the apocalypse clothed her in scarlet to identify her as a harlot, Thelema crowned her holy, crowned her as a goddess. Emerging from the ruins of Frey approach, Babalon ascends as an embodiment of sacred promiscuity, universal affection, and the obliteration of the illusory self. She represents a prominent instance of a symbol that has been reclaimed also from the dread associated with imperialism into the accelerating core of the contemporary mystical framework. In this metamorphosis, she evolves into a lasting entity, a deity that provokes the champion and ultimately emancipates. When speaking about Babalon, we work with the dynamic current, energy that comes through the vehicles of desire, surrender, and transformation. She is no abstract, distant figure to be worshipped, rather she is a dynamic presence that can be approached, contacted, and actualized. Preceding her is devotion, which is being willing to offer that which is most personal and real. Wine presented within a chalice, roses laid upon an altar, or even tender sentiment. These are not mere ritual acts. Mere invitations creating a linking point between human consciousness and her living current. With repeated invocation, the heart comes into vibration, causing the person to recognize her as much as the guide as the goddess. Babalon's trajectory journeys organically from piety into the domain of passion, where the other traditions repress the sexual, her mysteries please the sexual of hearts. Desire itself is sacrament, erotic energies blessed into the cup she carries, orgasm, the absurd delight, the donation of the body, an ecstatic offering, all are parts of the labor of the soul. Taking passion as sacred, the practitioner comes to see that there is nothing shameful in the body, the genuine surrender starts with the acceptance of all that one is. Out of devotion and desire comes the deeper process of surrender. The cup of Babalon is no mere cup to hold by no pleasure, but a symbol of the self. Working with her is the practice of dissolving the ego, where the person deposits their fears, their clinging, their illusions into her cup. This is the practice exercising leading up to the supreme task of crossing the abyss, where the aspirant must release everything, so that the personal self may be free to be the vehicle that reveals the larger self. The surrendering, which may seem first to be annihilation, is changed into ecstasy, disillusion that promises regeneration. Yet surrendering to the mysteries of Babalon essentially entwined with the idea of freedom. She represents the four who embraces all, and her path addresses the roots of shame, oppression, and limitation. Working with her allows the reclamation of the body, the self, and desire as sacred spaces. She teaches the freedom cannot be separated from integrity. Passing through her process requires the recognition of each part of the self, expression, sexuality, desire, and will, as sacred in order to live in absolute exposure and absolute energy. In the context of these practices, Babalon envelops herself through both vision and insight. She manifests within dreams, within the imaginative dimensions of ritual, or in trance states, or within the aethers as articulated in Ali's visionary endeavors. She communicates with those who earnestly seek her presence, offering guidance, instruction, and clarity on the journey that traverses the abyss. Through the lens of vision, surrender, and desire achieve meaningful direction, culminating in a confluence of devotion, passion, and liberation. Ultimately, all these currents converge toward the great work. Babalon serves as the initiator of the abyss, medium through which the ego is poured for purpose and transformation. She imparts that transcendence is achieved not through denial but through immersion, by engaging in love completely, surrendering entirely, embracing life wholly. Her mysteries are captivating, perilous, and exquisite, guaranteeing nothing short of the dissolution of the self into the infinite and ecstatic emergence of self that is reborn within the core of eternity. Babalon is the goddess of contradictions, containing an energy where both ecstatic release and strict limitation dominates. Her myth blends together effortlessly, demonstrating the entwinement of surrender, desire, and limitation as they engender the trajectory of this woman. She first appears as the Scarlet Woman, the consort of the Great Beast, and in the story she is not subservient or simply the adjunct to power. Instead, she is a vehicle through which power is focused, formed, and provided structure from root potentiality of the will. The magician, usually presented as masculine, has a potential to be radiant, ambitious, and motivated, yet his energy alone is then fire and confined. He is passive and grounded, and so unable to produce form within the physical dimension. It is the Scarlet Woman who contains and focuses and balances this energy, who gives limits and the sense of purpose so that the will of the magician does not blow itself off or self-devour. The rather become tangible, become creation, becoming the consummation of the great work. This union gives rise to the myth of the cup, the chalice into which the aspirant pours desire, life, and evil. In this sense, surrender and devotion are ultimately synonymous. Babylon's energy is that of a shaping force. She does not passively receive, instead she gives rise to transformation. Offering is more than just passivity. It is disciplined surrender to a stream that molds the will. As such, her limitation is no limitation of pride or refinement. By demanding that the offering be total and no binding the limits of that given, she ensures that the aspirant's energy is owned and directed. The cup becomes the crucible within which base desires change into divine. The transformational process drives the aspirant onward to the city of the pyramids, under the night of Pan. There the ego disappears, leaving behind a shining presence. It is the convergence between limitation and guidance, something can be fractionally that is not brought to nullity to rule the purpose. Whatever limitation Babylon places on the aspirant, the challenge to surrender to facing fear, to illuminate the aspirant's will and how mysteries, freedom, and discipline, and order exist together. And in the city, aspirants learn that the surrender to the influence of Babylon is the ultimate mastery, and the will is owned not merely by spiritual alone, but through being molded directly to the highest possible shape. Her energy also expresses itself in visions that correspond to the ethers. She appears as fire, as the universe is the voice that pushes and teaches. Each contact reveals the delicate tension between freedom and limitation. The aspirant has freedom to surrender to add to it. Yet this freedom is framed by her limitations, defined by the need for energy to be concentrated and aligned. Becoming obvious the role of the Scarlet Moon plays here. She is the vehicle through which the magician-related energy comes into being. Without whom the great work may exist in potentiality, which her emerges into the world, becoming flesh, taking on life. Babylon's myths, no matter which one, always stress the same essential principle, that her energy is both expansive and restricted at the same time. She is inclusive to no limit. She demands absolute allegiance. Longing is accepted, but it must be refined, concentrated, and disciplined. She teaches the lesson that we cannot be unlimited. Instead, it must be shaped, must meet resistance, and must be given a message. Otherwise, its radiance spreads to insignificance. In all other myths of hers, the Scarlet Woman, keeper of the cup, the godhead of the city of the pyramids, the fire of the abyss, the aethers, Babylon illuminates the contradiction of the limitation, this liberation, the ecstasy that comes from discipline and surrender as strength. She is the current that shapes the energy that directs and the substance wherein life potential is realized. Her mysteries, the great work is no longer an external journey, it becomes a transformation of the inner shaping of the will and sacramental alliance between the human and first and divine guidance. Babylon's energy flows from multiple currents, each revealing a facet of her mystery. Saturn is her primary planetary influence, a force of structure, limitation, and discipline that shapes and focuses the will. Desire and potential left unchecked scatter, but under her guidance they are concentrated and directed. Venus plays a secondary role, reflecting attraction, ecstasy, and the magnetic pull that drives the aspirant towards surrender. She embodies both pleasure and discipline, the paradox in which the great work becomes possible. But if we look further, she embodies all that Mother Earth represents. Growth, blossoming, nurture, yet still dependent on the fact that to be born anew is to rid of the old. The earth has flow, expansion, yet it's always erected, and by destruction will also be its ultimate. Babylon is even unveiled in Revelation is Mother Earth. Elementally, Babylon is aligned with water and earth, the feminine of the elements. Water carries the currents of emotion, intuition, and surrender. The flow of desire enters her cup, the alchemy of the ego dissolving into divine form. Each provides grounding, stability, and manifestation, reflecting her identification with Mother Earth, as well as the Grail, the sacred vessel that contains the infinite potential. Fire is not absent here, though her energy does not consume or scatter, but holds, nurtures, and shapes. She is the love and the will, the agape that brings Thelema. In Tarot, Babylon corresponds primarily to the lust card in the top of death. Here she is fearless, radiant, and fully embodied, riding the line of desire, a living archetype of the sacred whoredom and ecstatic mastery. Lust represents the integration of human and divine, the harmonization of passion and will, and the sanctification of desire. The High Priestess and the Empress may be considered honorary correspondences. The High Priestess will veiled into the wisdom, and the Empress for creative abundance, but for lust is actually designed after her, captures her essence most completely. Her colors are vivid and symbolic: scarlet and crimson for passion and transformation, purple for mystery, sacred authority, and spiritual depth. Her numerology numerology, 7 marking cycles, wholeness, and spiritual attainment. With her deeper numerical signature is 156, also associated with Libra Seth. And in gematria, this number is uniquely hers, reflecting her energy, her mysteries, and the sacred channel through which the aspirant pours their will into desire and the great work, since it is the sum of her name. Placed on the Kabbalistic tree of life, Babylon embodies Bina, great understanding, the womb, the form through which the infinite is given structure. Below her lies Daf, the hidden Sephirah, the grail, the threshold at which the aspirant encounters her God, and which chooses to step willingly into her currents. To drink from Daf is to accept the shaping, limiting, and sanctifying forth and transform ego into mastery. In Babylon, restriction is liberation, discipline is ecstasy, and surrender is power. She teaches that freedom is never formless, and that the will can only be achieved by full expansion when held, guided, concentrated, shaped by her energy into living manifest potential. Babylon does not exist in isolation. She is part of a lineage of goddesses whose power is erratic, transformative, and most often transgressive. To understand her fully, we can compare her to figures like Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte, Lilith, and Aphrodite, aka Venus, noting both the parallels and the distinctions that make her uniquely Thelemic. Inanna, later known as Ishtar, is the Sumerian goddess of heaven and beyond the world, goddess of love, war, and fertility. Like Babylon, she embodies paradox, desire, and destruction coexist in her, as she moves most fluidly between life and death, love and violence, ecstasy, and severity. Babylon echoes this duality, especially in her role as the initiatrix of the abyss. She is both seductive and exacting, goddess of pleasure and the guide through which to transform the crucible of surrender. Astarte, Phoenician goddess of love and war, similarly embodies eroticism and power, commanding devotion and conquest alike. Yet while Astarte's myth emphasizes dominance and influence in the mortal realm, Babylon channels this force. She shapes the will, disciplines desire, perverts ecstasy into mastery. When Astarte is often a figure of political and cosmic strategy, Babylon is the mystical vessel through which the aspirant's potential is realized, particularly within the framework of her. Lilith, the anciently debated and origin figure of independence, rebellion, and sexual liberation, resonates closely with Babylon and her refusal to submit to external authority. Both goddesses claim sovereignty over their bodies, desire, and spiritual currents. Aphrodite, or Venus, represents love, beauty, and sensuality in the pantheon. She is that type of attraction and desire. She is not merely desired, but she exists to inspire desire in others. She is the current through which desire itself is contracted and performed, whereas Aphrodite embodies the pull of attraction. Babylon embodies the transformative power of giving oneself entirely to that attraction, the sacred ecstasy that shapes the will and leads across the abyss. Babylon moves through the currents of desire, will, and transformation like a river carving its own path, once wild and purposeful, intoxicating, and exacting. She is the scarlet woman, the keeper of the cup, the initiatrix of the abyss, and the living force that shapes the potential into reality. Her energy asks for surrender, but is never blind. It is surrender that frees, that challenges, that channels, that gives form to what might other ways to cover into nothing. To work with her is to learn that desire and discipline are inseparable, that pleasure and structure are not opposites but partners, and that the will reaches its highest expression only when it's shaped, concentrated, and offered. She teaches that giving oneself fully is not weakness, but power, that the boundaries she imposes are not limitations, but very ecstasy and mastery. Devotion and courage, surrender and strength outflow together, guiding this path towards transformation and the great work. When we look at her, alongside gods like Inanna, Astarte, Lilith, and Venus, we see echoes of her energy, the sovereignty, the allure, the power of transformation. Babylon is uniquely precise and guiding toward the practitioner's divine will. She channels desire into form, she tempers passion into understanding, and she transforms surrender into mastery. She is the cup offered at Daf, the path of Bina, the flame and the vessel, the scarlet current that carries its fire across the abyss into conscious radiant power. To be invited to join the Babylonian current is to be invited into something vast and sacred. A current that challenges, transforms, and illuminates. She does not take lightly, and she does not coax timidly. It calls to those who are ready to give themselves fully to embrace the paradoxes of freedom and form, pleasure and discipline, surrender and strength, and in that giving, in the full conscious offering, the great work is realized, the self is perfected, and desire becomes sacred, living, and eternal. Thank you for watching. I am Elias, a Thelemic pagan from the lands of Latvia. I'm a trans feminine individual, and I hope to see you in another video. I also do tarot readings, a bit of astrology, graphology, and I also do spell work and ritual work. Thank you for watching. watching, and I hope to see you again. Love you. To wit our will shall be the whole of the law. Love under will, love under law.